Hi, everyone. Welcome. I'm Heather Mackay, founder and CEO of HM Pinnacle Consulting. And for the last 20 years, I've had the privilege of helping organizations navigate their people side of their business. And I truly believe that when you invest in your leaders and in your people, everything else gets stronger, including your bottom line. So whether you're improving culture, developing leaders, or solving tough HR problems, I truly think that the passion that you have for developing your people is what you need for that culture change. And I'm lucky enough that I'm here with John, and I'll let him introduce himself.
Hi, everybody. I'm John Macheski. I spent the last 25 years leading operation teams in manufacturing and fast-paced environments. I've been on senior leadership teams, led multiple facilities, and my passion really is creating great teams that strive in fast-paced environments.
And I appreciate that you're here today. I'm also very appreciative of this topic because this happens to be one of my very favorite topics to have with leaders when they say, why am I having such a hard time keeping people? And we go back to the idea that it has everything to do with leadership. Leadership is the reason people stay or leave an organization. But we need to take 2 or 3 or 4 steps back behind that and say, but how did you get your leaders? Where did they come from? And how much have you invested in them? So one of the things that I like to point out is we have a tendency to over promote and under train. We don't do it on purpose in most organizations. We truly do believe that if you're a great employee in whatever you do, that's going to make you an excellent leader, which is so far from the truth, because your skill set as a engineer, as a operator, whatever it is, that skill set is not transferable to leadership skills. There's a big difference between the two of those, and we get into that promotion trap on a regular basis. Have you seen that?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because I come at this a couple different ways, right?
Okay, I'm interested.
Because I think the more you can promote within, I mean, I'm
Okay.
a big, if you're trying to grow a great culture and you got a culture, promoting within to me is a big deal, right? Because that's also driving a stronger culture. If you're always bringing new leaders from the outside, that's hard. It's not easy to do.
You're right, but you don't just promote people, right? Don't you take the
No.
time to ask them if they want to be a leader? Because one of the things that there needs to be really 2 tracks in organizations, because not everyone wants to lead people.
No, totally. I agree with that 100%. I think, I mean, there's always got to be an interest, right? I hear what you're
Okay. So
saying.
you start back farther and you learn if they want
Yeah,
to lead
you
first.
gotta,
Okay.
but I think you can also fall into that is, do you have a strong coaching framework to put people through?
Yeah.
I mean, I've went through that in my career of, having young leaders reach out and be like, hey, so how do I work with you now? And I was like, ooh, I gotta remember it, like, because they were a superstar, and I kind of fell into that, like, oh, they're good, they're flowing, but I had to remember that on that there's a lot of things they haven't dealt with, right?
Yeah, and that's the one thing I think that we as leaders have to remember is that often when you promote people, you're taking them out of what their expertise is. You're taking them out of their sweet spot, right? They have to learn how to have a new sweet spot. And so we have a tendency to think all of those skills are going to come with them. And that technical experience and excellence doesn't make leadership excellence automatically.
Yeah. So I'm going to talk about a personal experience. I didn't think I was going to go here today, but I guess
Okay.
here
I'm
we
dying to
are,
hear
right?
it.
So
Wait, am I dying to hear it? Am I going to
no,
enjoy this story?
I think here's what we always have to understand. When we get promoted, when we promote others, there's always the, hey, I got promoted. So you're at the top of a ladder at one point and you're excited, right? You're like, oh, I've made it. I'm going somewhere, right? I'm maybe it's been my dream, whatever it is. But as soon as you now leave and go to that other job, no one ever comes over and really looks at you and say, hey, you're now a part of X team, leadership team, the senior team, whatever it is, right? And says, by the way, that means you're standing next to the ladder, both feet on the ground, and you're not at the top of the ladder no more. Like, so you move to the next level, and trust me,
It's why new leaders struggle.
yeah,
It's
because
true.
you come out and in a sense, I don't want this to sound the way it's going to, but I wish someone would have knocked me down a few rungs so I didn't have to do it myself. Because boy,
Been there, done that. Yeah.
it wasn't. I mean, it wasn't bad, but it wasn't graceful. I didn't hurt myself, but I had to stop and I looked at myself 12 years ago and I went, well, probably now 14. My goodness. Um, I'm like, wait a minute, I'm at the bottom, even though I spent so many years climbing. I'm at a bottom of a rung that I need to learn because it goes to what you said. I went to another level, and there are a lot of things nobody prepped me for what I was about to do, right?
So that's one of the things I especially want CEOs to know, but also HR professionals, if you're learning how to develop your internal team, because I agree, I think internal promotions, whenever you can do those, they have so many more benefits than external, right? So when you do an internal promotion, number one, you're keeping all of that tribal knowledge in-house and you're growing the organization in a way that allows the mistakes that have already previously occurred to be part of that growth pattern. Two, it helps build a culture of retention because people see that there's opportunities for growth, and especially the younger generation. That is one of the things I get asked a lot when I'm interviewing is, what is the growth potential in this organization? So you want to make sure that you're promoting from within so that you can create a healthier culture. But, and this is a huge but, do not do it without helping new leaders in that new role, because one of the things that happens is they're shifting from doing the work to leading others doing the work, right? And that's a big change. And I even suffer today, even as a CEO, sometimes I want to just do the work because it's way easier than doing the hard stuff as leaders. But you're shifting from that doing the job to leading others, and that's difficult. You're also learning to let go of being the expert. You can no longer be giving direction all the time. You have to allow your team to be doing that, right? Because that's what leadership's about. It's about growing other people. So when you go from that expert, like you were just talking about, and you're going to another role as a leader, make sure that you're taking that information with you, or you're preparing those leaders for that, right? The one that I found the hardest, and I don't know if you've ever found this or have had a story on this, but is learning to manage your peers. Have you had that?
I mean, I think we put a whole course together on that, right? Because I think it's hard in so many ways. To step out and no longer understand there's certain things you can't be doing anymore that you were before. It's not easy. I mean, there's a lot. I mean, right there, there's a lot to unpack just there.
Like
right?
even delegating and not stepping in and doing the job for them.
Yeah.
But, and I think we should do a talk specifically on how to start managing your peers. So we won't dive into it really heavily right now, because I think you're right. I think there's an entire structure around how we do that right.
Well, and here's the thing. I don't think sometimes we as leaders, when we're promoting and grabbing the person that's the star, understand that that's something we should be focused on. I've looked at my career and I failed people. Is they didn't realize as they were jumping into their roles that, hey, there wasn't the conversation of, hey, so we're going to have this honest conversation today about these are some things that were normal before that you got to think about moving forward, because it's going to create an awkward spot, right? And I do think that's on all of us as leaders as we're promoting. That we got to think about. But I want to go back for 1 second.
Yeah, go ahead.
And talk about promoting within, even though sometimes there's some hiccups with that. One reason I like promoting within is you already know someone's failures. Like, so I'm a big promoter, or a big favorite of, like, everybody's like, well, we got to see what's outside. And I'm like, yeah, but now I got to spend 6 months to a year to learn someone completely. Where if we're promoting within and understanding this pitfall, because this is a big pitfall, but if we put framework around it and make sure, I go back to what you said, I really like it, is when you ask me just of, you got to make sure they want to do it. because if you're pushing someone into being a leader, but man, it's a big success if you already know what someone's failures or maybe weaknesses are to move forward.
So I completely agree. But so, like, the topic for tonight specifically was the idea of having an excellent employee that then becomes a mediocre or terrible leader, and then how we fix that. So, based on what you're talking about right now, that's where I see your point. Because if you already know their failures and their weaknesses and their strengths, it's going to be easier to coach them into being a leader. And you already know whether they have the capabilities to lead. But it also comes with big hiccups. And what I mean by that is, if you haven't been doing a succession planning or an ability to grow other roles inside, you're going to pull them out of this expertise role that they have that no one else can now fill to put them into a leadership role. Right? So you have to be careful in leadership in general, especially at the higher levels, of making sure that you're creating a pipeline all the way up and you're growing your team. If that's your culture of doing internal promotions, make sure that you are building the bandwidth inside your organization so that when you do promote, you aren't leaving a hole somewhere. It has to be an internal promotion. What do I want to call it? Like a pyramid, for lack of a better term, because you've got to be able to then move the next person up and the next person up into those roles. So you got to continually be in a growing mentality inside your organization to be able to do that. But I love the idea of it.
Yeah, and that gets real powerful.
It does. But I wanna ask you how you do this part of it, right? Because one of the things we were just talking about is you've got this excellent employee. They've been with you for years. They're super good at what they do. You always go to them every time you need something done because they are always going to be the ones who can solve the problem, have the best knowledge of the organization, etc. So now we've talked to them. They've decided they want to be, they decided they want to be promoted into a leadership role. So we put them into a leadership role. They are not going to be doing good on day one. They're not. So do you start training them for the leadership role before you put them into it? Or do you put them into an in-depth leadership training afterwards?
Yeah, I mean, I think ideally, it's so in a perfect world, right? In a perfect world, we'd want to be doing things ahead of time. I think getting, if we see these coming, I mean, ideally, if we really want to go back to your pipeline, right? Ideally, we want to be asking people if they want to be moving up and be having the training. So, hey, when the next position opens, we could pop somebody into it, right? But we don't always, as leaders and in organizations, have the bandwidth or the ability to say we should be doing that until it's late. Ideally, yeah.
So I'm going to push back on that and disagree. I think if you are going to have a healthy culture, you have to make time for that. Because one of the things that if I walk into your organization and we're sitting down to do your workforce analysis to see what your workforce is like, one of the things that I want to know is, have you talked to all of your team about what kind of a career path they want? Because there are two career paths. And for some reason, we forget that. We totally do. There are two career paths. One, a career path in leadership. Do you want to lead other people? The other career path, which is just as important and we sometimes forget, is the technical career path. If somebody says, I absolutely do not think I can lead people, I don't want to lead people, I don't have the patience for it, I really love doing what I do and I'm excellent at it, that should not be a punishment or a penalty. And so I always say, make sure there is growth inside of that technical path as well as growth inside of that leadership path, because that's how you're going to retain your employees, but also how you're going to build a really strong structure so that you can train new people underneath of them, right? That's where you're going to get that from. So every single employee in your organization should have had a conversation with you, if you are their supervisor, their boss, their leader, or with HR or both. And that should be part of what you talk about, because then it goes back to what you said. Then you can start figuring out how to develop them early on.
And I mean, I totally agree with that. And I also think the ability, if you have a culture that you're driving and you're coaching, you have your leadership team, you have your supervisors, and maybe you have leads and things under that, right? Different levels. If you're having that communication and teaching leadership through your organization. And at some time and point, including that whole group, right? You're creating, even to that lower group that you're bringing into that meeting, you're creating that, already teaching them what the expectations are, what, as they grow as a leader in general, right? So I think, yeah, I mean, I agree with that wholeheartedly. I come back to this. Having strong cultures is all about cultivating. That's what you're talking about, is making sure we're cultivating, getting one, where do people want to be? Because I agree with you. Some people are like, hey, I don't want to lead people, but I can go do that job and be really good at it, give them a path.
Yeah.
And maybe you need to create something a little different for some people that fall into that, so they have growth in that. There's also nothing wrong with that when you got someone great doing a job, right? But then as you're cultivating leaders, when you can go cultivate and create a culture of people that have been together for years, and then someone leaves and you put another leader in there that is familiar with the culture, that's powerful. Because if you stick a leader in there that isn't familiar with that culture, it's not always that easy.
No, I agree. But I think I think it's a slower process than what people think. I think we as CEOs or leaders in general, we think once we add somebody into that role, especially if they've been groomed beforehand and they've been in the organization a while, that they're automatically going to be successful in it. And I want to caution leaders to say, be patient.
Yeah.
Be patient with your new leaders. Be patient with them, because it takes a while for them to get there. And don't give up on them. Don't give up and assume that they need to go back to their other role or that they aren't making it, right? First time leaders are going to struggle. It doesn't mean that they don't have potential. It just means that they need some coaching, right? And they need confidence. And confidence comes when you support them. When you support them and you're there to give them advice, but not direction. When you're there to listen and allow them to lead, that's where they're going to get their confidence from. And that's important. So don't give up on them too easy.
Yeah, and what I've found to work really well is new leaders, when you check in with them, checking in with them in their environment. I know.
I like that
Yeah,
idea.
I mean, I know sometimes we're all like, hey, come up to my office and all this other stuff. I think we have to understand, go into their environment, go into where
I think
they're
that's
at.
so powerful.
And sometimes
Yeah.
if you've listened to me before, you've heard I'm not a fan of one-on-ones.
And I am a fan of
So
one-on-ones.
that's
So we just
another
won't
day.
even go there.
That's a whole other day. But a check-in in their environment.
Yeah.
And when it's just kind of, and I'm gonna say this, kind of chilled, like, hey, so start the conversation. And it really goes to a point where you get to start to be, because you earn this. You're not given this right to be someone's mentor. You earn it, right? And I'm a believer in that. Like, they're the ones that got to let you in. But when you create that, when you promote someone and you're there and you're not necessarily being critical or just talking about KPIs, you're like, hey, so where do you need help? Like, let me know. Like, what's a struggle? And they give you something and open up a little bit. And it's, you step in instead of being critical, but you step in and you're like, okay, yeah, those are tough situations. Let's talk about it. Let's and start giving them, hey, this is kind of what maybe I would have done. That's where I think, going back to those young leaders, especially as we grow in the organization, is creating the environment when you meet with them for it to be a very calm environment for them to open up. I think sometimes we create the environment where it's hard for people to be like, hey, I'm new. And I had someone do this to me not long ago that said, hey, what's the best way for me to communicate with you? I was like, well, that's not cool. That was on me. So it reminded me to stop and go, because it was the exact situation of someone being really good. Go ahead. I think you got something.
So I was going to say, I appreciate where you're coming from, but I want to caution you as a leader not to wait. So you need to be very observant. When you promote someone, observe them, because they're not always going to even know the problems that are going to hit them soon. Yeah. They're not going to know what they're doing is going to end into a brick wall. And what happens is they hit the wall before they come to you because they didn't realize they were going to. But if you're observing them, especially if they're a new leader and it's their first time leading, or they've been promoted into a higher level of leadership, observe. Be there to support them and to stop the brick wall. And you don't stop it by engaging and going, hey, you're going to hit a brick wall. Instead, you're like, hey, it looks like we're heading this direction. How can I support you so that we're going blah, 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 whatever it is, right? But I think we need to be careful and be honest, right? Truth is kind. So making sure that you're stopping them before they hit that wall when you're a new leader, because some of those hiccups that they have, some of those wall smacks that they have are really hard to come back from with their teams. So you don't want to allow that to happen. Failure early on in leadership needs to be small. And then they will continue to grow. And once you stop and you help them in those moments, they will come to you the next time before they get that close, right? So making sure you're observing and jumping in to support them and to have open communication and dialogue as you're watching things maybe go in the wrong direction is very valid and important as well, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you wholeheartedly there. It's just, it's the coaching as they go into it is what we're talking about. But I think I go back to just don't fall into it's kind of what Heather named this as, right? Is don't fall into, hey, they're great, and you're going to focus on something else. Remember, they're learning again. I go back to my experience.
That's a brilliant way to say it.
They're learning again.
They're learning all over again. And so don't put them in the role and then walk away from them.
It's hard sometimes because
it's an
you're
investment. If you're going to promote somebody into leadership, it's an investment on your time into them. That's the only way they're going to be successful and be transformed into that leader. That's a really good point.
I think it's where it's hard is if you've seen somebody and worked with them for years and they've been a superstar, you have to take them out and be like, oh, that's right. They're a superstar at X role. They're now starting here. I got to do the same thing differently
all over again.
I mean, and that's me looking in the mirror, like knowing that I've not always done a great job at that. And we had to come back and be like, oh, that's right. Yeah. They were good at what they were doing, but now they got a bunch of questions again.
And we become impatient because they've been with us for so long. We become impatient with the fact that we're having to train all over again. So don't do that. That is an easy habit as leaders that we get into is like, they should already know how to do this. Why should they know how to do this? Like, this is brand new to them, right? Just because they did something else so good does not mean that they automatically are going to do that well. So you've got to be careful about doing that. I think the other question that organizations need to ask themselves is, if you're promoting that great operator into that new job, what happens with that gap? Right? And why I say that is because if you're putting that leader into a role and then leaving that space empty, you actually are setting them up for failure. So be careful not to assume they're going to fill that role that they used to be in, or that they can do both roles until they find somebody to do that role, which we have a tendency in organizations to do also.
Sometimes.
Yeah. So just be careful in organizations when you're ready to promote somebody that you really do have a plan for the position that's being left, for the duties that may no longer be on that other role. That's really important as well.
Yeah. I mean, I think, again, it comes to, you've said it more than once in many of these conversations we've had, is this is all about succession planning.
Cross-training and succession planning.
And especially when you get moving in, again, I go back to creating the culture that really strives. And if you can be moving people up in your organization and you're creating the bench, right? Things flow really well because you already know, ideally as leaders with this, we would like to be able to say, hey, so if Heather leaves, I got John that's going to take her spot. And that's not today, but I'm already grooming him he's in the leadership conversations. He understands what it is. And those moves become real easy and systematic, right? If we're planning ahead, going back to what you said before, we need to be cultivating and planning, right?
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And I think one of the things you guys should be paying attention to is your pipeline strong or not, right? Yeah. And so one of the ways to look at that, the signs of really poor pipelines is you promote somebody and you always have to do an external hire afterwards, right? So similar to what John was saying, that internal promotion, but you also know who you're going to internally promote after that role, right? And if you don't have that, that's a weakness in your pipeline, right? Or one person is the go-to for everything. Oh, I can only go to so-and-so, or so-and-so is the only person. So even when you promote them, they still are the person you go to for everything, right? Also a weak pipeline, right? Or vacations and retirements, they create panic because you don't have anyone who can fill that. That is also a part of a weak pipeline, right? And leadership opening stalls needs to be something that you guys are prepared for. So know when your leaders are going to be leaving, or if they're going to be retiring or taking on new roles, right? And where that knowledge lies, and who the people in their teams might want to lead later.
And I also think, because there is a time and point where, I'm sure someone out there is saying, well, but there is a time and point where I got to bring, if I'm promoting people, right, within, there is that level where you're bringing people in. Well, I think that's also where this starts. Like, as you're bringing those entry level positions per se open up, that's where it starts right from the get-go. Is if you got so many entry level positions, well, when you're hiring, maybe that's got to be part of your process. Is, hey, are we hiring for future leaders, or are we hiring?
Yes, that's what I want all leaders to feel, because that's what you should be doing. We need to, you should know when you're getting ready to hire how many potential leadership positions you're going to have in the next 3 or 5 years that are going to come open. Because when you're hiring in, that's what you should be hiring for. I agree. Not only for the passion and the skills, but also for future growth in your organization.
Yeah, because that's, I like how you said that, right? Is if we're not really paying attention all the way through the organization, there becomes a gap somewhere. And I really do think, again, I go back to, I'm a strong culture person. Like, if you're not working on your culture and growing a culture of people come together, it's hard when you bring somebody and put them in the middle that isn't used to it. I'm not saying it's not going to work and that people can't adapt, but it's a big change. Cultures drive everything in my book. It drives people wanting to come to work every day, wanting to be there. So really focusing on that all the way down just drives a strong organization.
I completely agree with you. I think what business leaders need to do is they need to treat succession planning as an ongoing business strategy. I think that right there will help more organizations have a healthy pipeline, will have a healthier ability to promote from within. And it'll also get rid of the, I promoted my best operator and now I've got a sucky leader. Am I allowed to say sucky? Well, I did. Doesn't matter. Because I know we feel it. But that's the problem, is that when we don't have it as a strategy, we miss the mark. And then you end up with these huge gaps in unusual places that are hard to fill. And it does create culture problems.
Well, I really like how you just said that.
The sucky word or the rest?
No, the strategy. Strategy.
It's a business strategy. It has to be.
Building leaders and building culture is a business strategy. They both are. And if you're not doing that, I would like to understand how big of a hurdle those two things are, because it is a business strategy. And I think that's where you founded HMP on is about people-centered leadership, right?
It's about people operations, and operations is the full structure of employees, right? So it's everything from the basic day-to-days that you need to think of as a leader, but also the long-term strategy, right? If you're stuck in the day-to-day as a leader, your team has nowhere to go. There's no ability for them to grow, no ability for you to put a strategy together for their growth either.
Yeah. I mean, that's a whole
nother leadership toolbox item.
Of where people focused, right?
Totally.
In building the organization, because what we just talked about takes focus.
Yeah. So I want you to think, have you ever promoted your very best performer and then watched them struggle? Because if you have, then you have this problem. This is one of those key things that you need to take a hard look in the mirror at yourself and say, do I have leaders right now in my organization that are struggling, but they've been long-term employees and they were really great at what they did before? It's not too late to fix them. It's not too late to give them the coaching and the training that they need. You have to be patient with them. You have to actually engage with them. They aren't going to figure it out on their own, and they're not going to go take a course by themselves and come back magically better at leading, right? They need to be empowered and to be given confidence from you, but they also need your time.
Yeah, and I'll say this here at the end is teach them how to be a leader, not a manager.
Amen.
Right? And as they're becoming a leader, just remember they may not know how to be a servant because they've been doing really well operating by themselves.
Yeah.
They need to understand putting others first is where it's at. So I come back to please make leaders, not managers, and teach them how to be a servant and put others first and really drive that forward because that's going to create a path that's going to be really powerful for them.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. I think one of the things, takeaway wise for you guys as leaders is not only what we're talking about is just promoting them doesn't end their development, but also a real measure of a leader is how well you prepare them to help others succeed, right? It's about building stronger teams and not stronger leaders, right? So you need to understand that your job as a leader is to build a stronger team. And that goes back to that servant leadership style that you were just talking about, where we put other people first. And strong organizations, they don't just build leaders, right? They build leadership pipelines. It's about the succession plan. It's about the business strategy on how you're going to build the next level and the next level leader and invest in all of your teams that way. Yeah. But also, caveat, make sure you're investing in those that just want the technical expertise path, career path as well, right? That's not what we're talking about here, but I didn't want that side to go unnoticed.
No, I think it's investment all the way through. And it goes to what you stated earlier is you got to have the business strategy all the way along the line, not just on the topic we're talking about today, but you got to be focused on everybody to have a strong culture.
Yeah, I agree. So if you have a amazing superstar operator and you're considering promoting them, make sure that 1, you ask them whether they want to leave. 2, you realize that's only the start of your investment in them once you do. And 3, make sure that you've already got some pipeline going so that you've got positions below to be filled by individuals inside your organization, right? Invest in those people. Don't do a one and done. It takes a lot of investment. Anything else you'd add to that?
No,
that's where the culture comes from. So I just want to say thanks so much for spending part of your day with us. I hope today's conversation gave you some practical tips and or pause for you to think about what you might be able to do or bring back to your organization as well. And if there's one thing we could leave you with, I would just say your people challenges are really your business challenges. So making sure you understand the investment in your people and your leaders is going to impact your bottom line, either positively or negatively, depending upon that investment, right? Organizations that invest in their leaders, in their people, and in their workforces before problems become crisis, those are the ones that are going to be stronger tomorrow. So if today's conversation resonated with you at all, we'd love to stay connected. So you can follow us at HM Pinnacle Consulting here on LinkedIn. Subscribe to our newsletter, the People Ops Blueprint, and gives you practical people and leadership tools and challenges at times. And check out our HMP People Pulse Check. It's an opportunity for CEOs and business owners to really get a simple understanding of what your current state in your culture is and identify ways that you can make the greatest impact. And you can find that on our website as well. We're so grateful that you spent some time with us. And I want to say thank you again, John, for all of your wisdom and your passion about people and leadership.
Thanks for having me.
Have a great night, guys.